just take a first glance at Google Sheets. So this is a lot like Microsoft Excel, except it doesn't have quite the same functionality. Google Sheets is much better than Excel for more collaborative type work. So if you're working with multiple people, Google Sheets is a really great alternative. Just as my own personal plug, I use Google Sheets every day in my work. So I'm really quite a big fan of it and just the collaborative functionality of it. So we'll get right into it, and I'll just kind of show you, overall how to use it. And then if you have any questions, please do save them for the end. We're going to break off into question and answer groups. So try to save your questions at that point, unless for some reason you can't hear me or you can't see something, just let us know and we'll address that. Okay, so I'm currently in Google Sheets right now. If you're not sure how to get to that, so basically if you have a Gmail account, which most people at this point do, what you can just do is I'll just type in a Google, so my search bar up here, I'll just type in Google Sheets and it'll take you, sorry, I can't type today. All right. The first, yeah, I believe the first link here will take you to Google Sheets. So on this page here, I can click go to Google Sheets, and if I'm signed in, I will see this page. So before you start a new spreadsheet, there are some templates that you can look at. So for example, if you wanted to make a to-do list, or perhaps maybe you're trying to create your monthly budget or start a calendar, something like that, you can take a look at all of these available templates here. So for our purposes, we're just going to start a blank Google Sheet, but just familiarize yourself with those if there's anything in there that's of interest to you that you might want to use as your template. So I'm going to start a blank Google Sheet. Okay. So I guess kind of just the first sort of introduction to this. So in my sheet here, I have the option to give a title. So if I kind of click on this untitled spreadsheet at the top, I can name it something. I'll just call it Cyber Seniors. Save that there. So there's a couple of icons to the right of my title that are important. So first of all, if you want to star this document, you basically add it to your favorites. And when you're looking at all of your files in Google Drive later on, you'll see that there's all your starred files are at the top. So that's just one way to kind of pin it so that you can find it again later if you so wish. There's also this icon, this folder icon to the right of that star that says move if you mouse over it. So if you select that, it allows you to choose where in your drive you're going to save this document. So say you wanted to save it in a particular folder, you can go ahead and move it there using that move icon. This last little button here, see document status. So this is just so that you can see if your document has been synced, if it's currently saving to the cloud, if it's ready for offline use. So basically, the way that any kind of Google Docs, Google Sheets, or any of these other Google softwares work is they're all situated on the cloud. So what that means is you don't have to save this document every 5 minutes or however often. It actually is automatically and continually syncing with your Google Drive, which is really great in case you do forget to save, which I have definitely done with Excel and with Word before and have lost information due to that. So it does automatically, provided you have an internet connection, sync itself with the cloud. So that's just kind of giving you a little status update as to, if it's syncing presently. You'll also notice as well, right here, there's this little indicator as to when the last edit was. So that's also going to just continually update itself as you're working on the document. Okay, so here we have this plain spreadsheet here. We've seen how to name it. So now just in terms of general navigation. So we have all of these cells in our document. So this is, if anyone's familiar with Excel, this is very much kind of a similar setup. So each of these individual cells, we can navigate either by clicking on them or by using our left, up, right, and down keys on our keyboard. So that'll allow you to just kind of navigate through your sheet. If you want to select multiple cells, so say, here, I'll just give you an example. I'll just put some letters in them. So say I wanted to select multiple cells so that I can delete them or change the formatting of them. All you do is you click on one of the cells that you want, you hold the Shift key, and then you select the other cell that you want to extend your selection to. So I can hold Shift key and click on my B cell, or I can extend it over to F. So that's one way that you can select multiple cells. So for example, I'm just going to hit the delete button and clear those. You can also, sorry, I'm also just looking at the notes here as well. So if you wanted to, say, for example, select an entire row or an entire column, so these are my columns, these A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and these are my rows, the 1, 2, 3s. So if I wanted to select an entire column, I would just hit the header here. So I'm going to click on A, and it'll go ahead and select everything within that column. So again, I can use that to change my formatting, to remove something, etc. So that just allows me to select multiple things at once. Similarly, if I want to select an entire row, I would just click on the number. And you can also select multiple rows at once, again, using that click and shift that I was mentioning earlier. So if I click on 1 and I also want to select all the way to 12, I would hold shift and then I would hit my left click on my mouse and I will select all of those rows at the same time. Okay, so in terms of formatting, as I was mentioning, so we do have at the top here on this taskbar, we do have some different formatting options. So for example, here I'll just put some gibberish text here. So if I wanted to say bold these letters in this cell, what I would do is I'd click the cell of interest and I can go ahead and click this B here for bolds and apply that formatting. We also, of course, have italics. You can add a strike through as well. We also have different text colors that we can apply. So again, if I go ahead and select that, I can change my text color, for example. I can reset it if I want to remove that. So a lot of that is very similar for anyone familiar with either other Google software such as Docs, or if you're used to using Word or Excel, this formatting is very much similar. So I won't spend too much time on that. So that's some of the basic formatting. You can also change the font style that you're using. So again, I still have that cell clicked at the moment. I can go ahead and change that. Right now it's set to Arial. I can change it to any of these other fonts in this list, as you can see. Additionally, if there is a font that you want that you don't see in that list, say maybe, I don't know, something funkier, you can go ahead and click on this More Fonts button at the very top. And there are additional fonts that come with the Google Suite. So I can scroll down through here and click on any of these that I'm interested in and apply those. So let's do, which one looks fun? Let's do Dossis. So I'm going to click OK, and what it's done is it's added that to my fonts. So these are additional fonts that aren't already default in Sheets that I've just added. So I could click multiple ones and add or remove them to Google Sheets, and it'll go ahead and add that to that right panel there under my fonts. So actually, I'll throw Quicksand in there. I'll click OK, and as you see, if I click on this font, wherever it went, no, I'm not seeing it. I think it already applied it actually. There we go. Yeah. Okay. So that's just to change your font styles. There is also this paint bucket option as well. So if I wanted to fill this cell in with a specific color, I could go ahead and click on my paint bucket. Right now it's just set to white. I could change it to, say, let's change it to teal there, and it'll go ahead and apply that. Now again, if I want to remove that color, I would click on that cell again, go back to that paint bucket, and either click on the white again, or I could just click reset, and it'll remove that formatting for me. So that was just some of the sort of basic formatting of the actual text itself. There are also, there's this borders option additionally if you want to change the way that the borders are presented. So here, I'll just add a little bit more gibberish so that we can see. Okay, so if I wanted to, say this was my table and I wanted to add some borders to it, what I can do is click on this borders icon here, and I can either, so there's kind of different options here. So I could add all borders, for example. So if I click that, you'll see that it's added borders around everything, both inside and outside of that selection. I could maybe just have inner borders. So if I click that, oh, it's not actually changing it. It should be changing it. That's interesting. Okay. All right, well, I'll just show you on a different selection here. So yeah, so I could change it instead to inner borders if I wanted. And currently my font, there we go. So yeah, so I've just added inner borders. You can change the border colors or the style of those borders as well. So going back to this first selection here, for example, say instead of black, I wanted it to be red. I could go ahead and apply that red, or maybe make it dashed instead of a solid line. So that's just some of the formatting that you can apply just around the actual cells themselves. Okay, I'll just leave that there. All right, so in terms of just like general sizing of your what's the word I'm looking for, cells, you can change that as well. So for example, for this column A here, I can either expand this or make it, expand this or make it smaller. So for example, if I move it, if I hold on to this little line here, you'll see I get like a double arrowed icon that appears. So if I hold that and drag it toward the left, I make that column smaller. If I hold that and drag it toward the right, I'll make that column larger. Exact same thing applies for the rows. So again, if I hover on that, that divide line between two rows, I can either expand that row or make that row smaller just by clicking and dragging. So that can be good, especially if you have, say, a lot of text. So here, I'll kind of show you what I mean. If I have a lot of text in one of these cells, and it's really hard to, oh, it's not doing word wrap. Okay, never mind. I'll show you guys later. But basically, sometimes you won't be able to see the full line of text that you're looking at, and expanding or minimizing the row can help to kind of make it easier to see for your tables. Okay, so that was on formatting. So let's kind of look at how we enter data and the different ways that we can do that. So as I've been doing so far, what I've just been doing to add data into a single cell is I've just been clicking the cell that I'm interested in. So right now I'm in column A on row 10 here. And if I just click on that cell and start typing, I can add data into it. But for example, if I want to enter data, the same data into multiple cells, what I can do is select multiple cells. So again, I would either touch the, or click on the first cell and then hold shift and select whatever else I want to add the data into. So I'll do that right here. And then what you can do is basically type in the data. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going backward on this. Sorry. So you would type in the data that you want into that first cell. And then what you do is, once you have that cell selected, on the bottom right-hand corner, if you hover your cursor over it, you'll see this little, like this little crosshair that'll appear. So if I select that and then drag it, you'll see that it will actually pull that data into other cells. So all I'm doing right here is I'm just dragging it, and it's applying it to multiple cells that I drag it into. So that can be really useful if you're trying to apply numbers into multiple cells, or as we might see later on, when we have any kind of function, like say we're trying to find the sum of multiple cells. So there's certain math functions we can apply. If you drag and drop, it'll actually apply that function to multiple cells at the same time, which can be very useful rather than having to input it again and again. Okay, so that was on entering data. So if you wanted to copy data, for example, so I'm just going to type in something here. If I wanted to copy data from, say, this cell right here all the way over to this cell there, what I can also do is either right-click and select copy, or I can, if you actually look beside the copy function there, it does tell you what the shortcut is. In Windows, it will be Control-C. If you're using Mac, you would select Command-C. So pretty much the same thing there. So I'm going to just Control-C, and I'm going to paste it over here. So to paste something, you either right-click and select that paste function, or again, if you want to use a shortcut, then you can select either Control-V on a PC, on a Windows PC, or Command-V. So I just Control-V'd that there, so that's pasted in another location. As I was alluding to earlier, there is an option to do kind of simple math within a cell. So if I wanted to for example, find out what the multiplication of two numbers is. So what you would do is you'd select the cell that you want to do that simple math in. You would hit the equal sign, which is right beside your backspace on your keyboard. And then you could type in, so for example, I'll put in 7 times 8. The times there, by the way, that I'm using is the asterisk. So if I do that, you're already seeing it's actually giving me the answer as a little sort of preview there, but I can also hit enter and it will do that simple math for me right in the cell. And it'll show me the formula in this sort of top bar here. So this top bar right here that has the F and the X, that's my formula bar. So that's where I can see, well, I might have the answer shown in this cell. I can actually see what the formula was that I needed in order to get that answer in my cell. All right, if you say, for example, so that was just on multiplying, if you wanted to find the sum of multiple cells, so here I'm just gonna throw some numbers in this sheet. Okay, so say I was maybe trying to figure out my budget for the month, what you can actually do is find the sum of multiple cells. And the way that you do that, so this is just kind of a very basic formula. There's some more complicated ones that you can get into with sheets, but here's one that's good to remember. So if you hit that equal sign again and you type in all caps sum, followed by the parentheses and open parentheses. So what you'll see here is I get this little menu pop up and it's just trying to give me like a guide as to how I apply this sum functionality. So what you do at this point is you will select the cells that you want to find the sum of. So I will click on that 5, I'll hold my shift key and then I'll click on this 3 because I want that whole row there or that whole column. So once I have that selection, I need to close my parentheses. So I'm going to put the other end of that parentheses there, and then I'm going to hit enter. And you'll see in this cell, I'm just going to bold that so it's easier to see, it's gone ahead and it's added up all of those cells for me. So again, I'll see that formula in that formula bar and my answer displayed on my actual Google Sheet. So sum is a very, very useful feature in Sheets. It's very similar, if not exactly the same as the sum function in Excel. There's a couple of other easy ones like that you can use. You could find the average, for example, of these numbers here. So instead of typing in sum, if I go equal sign and then type in average, and then again, open parentheses, I'll click on that 5, I'll click shift, and then I'll click on that final number there and close my parentheses. So there it's gone and given me the average of those 5 numbers there is 30. So there are those kind of simple, simple math functions that Sheets can do automatically for you, which is very, very useful. Additionally, so we looked at multiplication, it'll also do division. So if I say have 20 and I want to say 20, or sorry, I have to put the equal sign there. Always remember the equal sign. So equal sign 20 divided by say 5 should give me 4. I hit enter and it goes ahead and automatically does that for me. Similarly, you can use subtraction, so that's just the subtract key on your keyboard. So let's say 90 minus 10, I should get 80, there we go. It does that automatically for me. So just make sure if you are trying to do any of those math formulas, always put that equal sign in first, and that's kind of what triggers it to put that functionality in there. Okay, so that was on adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, specified cell values. We also kind of briefly looked at the sum and average function. There's many, many more, so we're not gonna like go over all of them because it would take us far longer than an hour. But if you do want to find any of those specific functions, you can do one of a few things. So either if you hit that enter key and start typing something, say you kind of vaguely remember, oh, I want to do, I don't know, I want to do my average, but I want a weighted average. So if you start typing an average, you'll see that Sheets will actually give you some suggestions as to which formula you're trying to use, and it'll kind of display that above. So I could go ahead and click average weighted, and then it'll start kind of guiding me through what I need to do next. So see here, it gives me an example of how I use this and kind of gives you a little bit more information. You could also select learn now, or sorry, learn more at the bottom, and it will give you this little help window that'll pop up, and it'll actually explain, what that function does, what that function looks like. So what are all the parts you need in order for Sheets to be able to calculate that for you. So here it's saying that you need to put your values in, you need to specify how you're weighting those values, any additional values or any additional weights. So it'll kind of guide you through that. So that's why I said we're not going to go over all the specifics here, but if there is, when we're into our question and answer groups, if there's like a really specific function that you're confused by, or just want to discuss, be sure to bring it up then. So that's just kind of an overview there of the functions. Okay, so moving forward, there is also, sorry, let me just, there we go. See, as you're seeing there, it wasn't letting me kind of exit out of that cell because I hadn't finished that function yet. So I just hit the delete button because I didn't actually want to find a weighted average. So there is also the function in Sheets to organize your cells either numerically or alphabetically. So let's do that for this. Actually, here, I'll just throw in some letters. Okay. So if I, for example, wanted to organize these cells alphabetically, so what I would do is, once again, I could highlight the row as either, again, clicking on the first one that I want, holding shift and clicking the last one. You can also just hold left click down and drag it over the selection that you want. And then in order to organize to alphabetically organize this, I would right click on my selection, and if you go down to sort range, so I click on that, it gives you the option to either sort it, so basically in ascending order from A to Z or from Z to A. So I can go ahead and do that. And it's going to apply this to column A, specifically from the range that I selected. So from A30 to A35. So I'm going to click sort there. And it did it. Did I put them in alphabetical order already? Okay, hold on. I want to actually see that change. I might have done that. There we go. So I'm going to change it from Z to A instead. So there you go. You'll see that it flipped them for me. If I had wanted to sort this entire column of A, again, as before, you can just click on A there. It'll select the entire column. And again, you can right click, click sort, and see you have this option, sort sheet A to Z, sort sheet Z to A. You can also do that with numbers. So again, if I hold over this selection there and right click and click sort range, it should give me the option to do in ascending or descending order, this time, of course, with number values rather than alphabetical values. There we go. Okay, so that was sorting rows. So we'll move on now to how to add charts and graphs. So we'll start with charts. Man, I should have like prepped some easy data so that this would be a little bit easier. I'm gonna have to put a lot of gibberish in, so bear with me. So if we want to, all right, actually I'll just do this. So maybe I can just use one of these previous ones here. I'll put some more values in. Okay, so if I want to add a chart, okay, sorry about that. All right, so if I want to add a chart, what I would do is, as before, you want to select any of the data that you're intending to include in your chart. So I've gone ahead and selected all of these cells. What you can then do is go over to, wait, sorry, is it data? Should be insert, right? Okay. So once you've selected what you want and you are intending to create a chart with that, if you click on the insert function at the top here, and then, oops, sorry, and then scroll down to chart, I can go ahead and select that, and it should automatically, based on the data that I selected, add a chart in for me. Now, the thing here is I put in some completely gibberish data, so this isn't necessarily going to look pretty, but just for the sake of this demo, let's take a look at this. So on the right-hand side of my screen, you'll see that I have this chart editor that just opened. So this is where I can kind of change some of the parameters of my chart. So for example, rather than this being a pie chart, if I go under chart type, I can change it to, I've got some line charts, I've got columns, I can change it to a scatter plot, I can change it to a map. So there's a ton of different options in here depending on how you want your data represented that you can select. I'll keep it, actually just for fun, let's change it to a line chart just to see what that looks like. So there you go, it gives me my axes and my data plotted there. Just underneath that, it gives you your data range. So I specifically had selected this data here, but say for example, I don't know, I had an additional row that I'm going to add here. I'll go back to my chart. Oops. Okay. So just by the way, just what I did there, because I got out of that chart editor, if you want to go back into the chart editor, click on your chart and then just right click it, and you can click any of these sort of options here to edit it. So either I can like click on the chart area and resize my chart area, which I will do right now because there we go. So I'm going to just select the range that oh no, it's not letting me do that. Okay, sorry. Resize chart area. There we go. So it brings me back into the chart editor. If I click on this data range here and say select data range, I can go ahead and increase that data range, which it looks like it already did for me, which is great. Cool. Okay, so that just allows you, again, once I selected that, I can go and expand or contract sort of the area of data that I actually want to include in my chart. So I'm going to click OK there. You'll see as well under this x-axis here, I can either add a label, say, for example, to my x-axis. I can remove that label as well. There's a bunch of different sort of options to fine-tune your chart. I don't think that I'm going to go into great depth about all of the sort of functionality there because it really depends on your data set, and there's a lot. There's a lot of functionality that you can add or remove there. So we're just going to keep it really to kind of the brief overview. So, so there's some options on how to modify and customize your x-axis. There's also the series here, which is referring to my data series. Specifically, it's referring to these numbers here on my y-axis. So x-axis and this is y-axis. So you can add an additional series if you want. If I had another list of numbers, I could go ahead and click add series and select them using this. There's also, you'll notice at the very bottom, it gives me the option to switch my rows and columns. So for example, if I go ahead and click on that, it's going to flip it. So my axes are going to be flipped. So now it just doesn't look like anything. So Sheets is kind of smart sometimes in that it'll usually try and assign what makes sense to the appropriate axes, but sometimes it's wrong, and so you can go ahead and flip your rows and columns here. And then additionally, use row 30 as headers. So what it's saying there is basically, say I selected this data, but actually this was, let's say, so say, for example, when I selected this data, I had actually intended for these initial rows here to be my titles, not part of my data. So going back into this editor here. So if I select or unselect this, it basically will use those first rows there as labels. And you'll notice actually that it automatically selected that once I added the title 1 and title 2 there. Because when I went, I didn't actually select this myself. So there is some sort of like smart functionality with Sheets similar to Excel where it knows what you're trying to do and it'll try and adjust itself accordingly. But at any rate, so those are some of the options that we have for Chart Editor. If you click on, so this was under setup, if you click customize, there's a ton of additional options with just how to generally like format the look of your chart. We are not going to go into all of these because again, there are a lot, but you can do things like change what your line looks like for your series of data. You can add a legend. You can basically change the formatting on the on the labels and the indicators on your axes here. So if you want to change the font style, you can go nuts with all these options. You can add and remove grid lines. So there's quite a lot in terms of the formatting for the charts, and you'll see it's going to be much the same for the graphs as well. So actually, yeah, in fact, I'll show you that real quick. So if I again select the data that I would like to make into this time a graph, for example, if I go ahead and click that insert function, oh, I'm sorry, graph and chart are the same in Sheets. My bad. I'm kind of like thinking of two programs right now because I also do use Excel a lot, and they will refer to things as graph, I believe, additionally. So that chart functionality is your graphing tool, essentially. So awesome, we already covered both then. Okay, so if we want to add additional sheets, so for example, what I'll often do when I'm working on my own projects is I'll have a sheet that I just have put all my raw data in, and then I have a separate sheet maybe that's different data, or maybe I have a separate sheet for just displaying my actual chart or my graph, whatever you want to call it. So to add additional sheets, if you look at the bottom of your screen here, you'll see this page that I'm on, or the sheet that I'm on at the moment. It's just labeled sheet 1. To the left of that, you have this plus sign here, and if you mouse over it, it says add sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And what it does is it adds a new blank sheet to your document. So now you'll see I have this blank sheet 2 with nothing on it. If I go back and click on sheet 1 here, it'll skip me back to sheet 1. What I can do as well, I can rename these sheets. So if you double click on the title, I can rename them. So I don't know, just type in CS there, and it'll save that for you. So that's just kind of how you can format your work, or like I was saying, sometimes I'll put all the data in one sheet. That's just my raw data dump, and then I display my graph or chart rather in a separate sheet. So that's that. If you have a lot of sheets, what'll sometimes happen is you won't be able to see all of them. I wonder if I can show you guys real quick. Let me just go ham and add a bunch. Okay, so oops, that might have been too many. All right, so as you can see here, there's quite a lot of sheets now. You can navigate through them using these scroll left and scroll right buttons that you see at the bottom here. So these left and right facing little arrows. So I can get through to my different sheets. Also, if you see this right to the left, or sorry, to the right of my add sheet button, there's this all sheets button. If I click that, it will show me all of the sheets that I have created, and I can use it to skip to them rather than using these left and right arrows. So that's just another easier way of navigating your sheets. So we went through how to rename our sheets, but if we want to remove them, what you can do is just see the little down facing arrow beside the name of your sheet. If you click on that, it gives you the option to delete it. You can also duplicate them, for example. There's actually a few other fun little features in here too. So for example, I can also change the color of that tab. So I'm going to change this sheet 3 to yellow. So that can be a good kind of organizational way if you're trying to like track certain tabs or certain sheets. You can add colors to them just for navigational purposes. What you can also do is copy to. So say, for example, I have another Google Sheet open and I actually want to copy this sheet into it. You can use that copy to functionality to either copy it into an existing spreadsheet. So like I said, I already have another one started and I just want to import this, this specific sheet into it. Or I can create a brand new spreadsheet. I could say, okay, for sheet 3, I'd like to copy this into a new spreadsheet, and now I can go open it, and here we go. So this is my sheet 3 that I've copied into a brand new spreadsheet. So again, this is like a pretty quick run through some of these sheets. You can move them around either by clicking on them and dragging them to wherever you want to put them in this order here. There's also the option, again, if you click on that little down arrow, of moving it right or left. So I can just click that and it'll move it left or right. All right. So again, that's just kind of a sort of brief introduction to manipulating those sheets there. There is another functionality in Excel, or sorry, in Sheets, that I won't get into too much depth about, but there is an option to add macros. So macros are basically, it's a good way of explaining them. So macros are a way of kind of recording a sort of specific series of interactions or commands that you're making in Sheets. So say instead of having to format, I don't know, to type in a certain series of letters and then format them bold and give them a fill in that cell with pink or something 20 times, you can just add a macro that will automatically do that for you. So to do that, and again, I'm not going to get in depth about how to add macros or the different functionality of that. That is a Q&A question because they can get very complicated. But just so you know where they are and a little bit about them, so what you would do is click on the Tools button at the top here. So I'm going to click on Tools. And if you go down to macros, you can record a macro. So when you're recording a macro, this is basically when you're saying, okay, I want Sheets to repeat this specific series of whatever, of interactions or of commands, and you go ahead and you do them and then you stop recording. So say for example, I'm going to type in some letters, I'm going to make the background fuchsia, I'm going to bold them, and then I'm going to drag it down and I am going to click save. So now when I hit save, I can give that macro a name. I'm just going to call it demo. And if you want, you could give it a specific keyboard shortcut. So I don't know, whenever I click Control Alt Shift and then a number, it'll repeat that series of actions that I just recorded. I'm not going to bother right now. I'm just going to click save. So it'll say that it's saving that macro. And if, for example, maybe I want to edit that macro, I can go ahead and go back into my tools, again, go to macros, and you'll see that second option now is available to select that says manage macros. So I'm gonna go ahead and click that. And I can go in there now using this three dots here on the right. I can click that and then click edit script. And I can go in and, oh no, that's the script. That's not what I wanted. Oh, I guess it doesn't let you actually update the macro without creating a new one. Okay, never mind. So if I did want to then to modify that macro, I would have to just record my series of actions again. It doesn't seem that Sheets allows you to just re-record it.
You can't.
Connor, were you trying to say something?
Yeah, I thought you could record a macro, re-record a macros.
Yeah, I thought you could too, but it's just giving me the option right now to go into the actual script behind it, which we are obviously not going to touch in this beginner demo. So
oh yeah, we're not gonna go to the script editor.
Yeah, no.
Google script editor. I think you probably could for there, but
yeah, like I said, I'm trying to just give sort of an overall kind of glimpse as to what macros are, but this could be its own hour-long demo easily.
Oh, it could.
So I'm not gonna go in depth on them. If you're really curious about macros, again, we can talk about it a little bit more in the QA if you have a specific question. But also, not to tout Google too much, but Google will be your friend. There are a lot of tutorials, of YouTube videos on how to use macros, on specific macros that might be useful. So if you're really curious, that is a good avenue to explore. But anyway, that's just like a super kind of, here are macros, here's where they are, here's kind of an overview as to what they can do. But we won't dive into that any more deeply right now. Okay, so that was our macros. So let's take a look into our sharing options, because as I was mentioning earlier, Google Sheets is very good for collaboration. So if you want to share this document with someone else, what you could do is in the top right-hand corner, you'll see this big green button that says share. So if I hover over that right now, it's private. I'm only sharing this with myself. But if I click on that button, I do have the option. Can you guys still see my screen? I don't know if it's.
Yes, it's still, if you use it, it will show the email that you type in there. Yes. but it
Yeah,
will,
no worries.
but the YouTube video will blur it.
Okay, that's so good. Thank you, Connor. Anyway, sorry. So as I was saying, what you can do at this point on this screen is either you can copy this link and share it with people. So I can copy this link and send it to someone using Instant Messenger, or I can paste that into an email. Or alternatively, what I can do, so I have some settings here. Right now, my document is restricted, which means that only people who are added to the document can open with this link. I could change this. So if I click that little down arrow, I can change this so that anyone with the link can access it. And right now, anyone with the link can access it just to view, but I could further change that and say anyone with the link can comment on it, or anyone with the link can edit it. So if you wanted to collaborate with someone and have them be able to edit the document at the same time as you and give them that full permission, then you would change it to that editor mode there, for example. Alternatively, so I'm going to put it back onto restricted. There should be an option, and I don't know why it's not showing it, which is kind of weird. There should be an option to send. Oh, there it is. Okay, never mind. So yeah, so when I click on this share button here, what I can also do rather than using links, and I don't want to click it just because I don't want to like give away people's email addresses here, but if I click in this little add people in groups box, I can go ahead and type the email of whoever it is that I'd like to share the document with. And sort of same idea. So if I type their name in, I'll get the option to either assign them as a commenter, a viewer, or an editor. So if they're a viewer, they can only look at it. They can't interact with it in any way. If they're an editor, they have the exact same sort of permissions as I do as far as editing is concerned. I'll still be the owner of the document, so they can't delete it or anything, but they can edit anything within the actual sheet. And then finally, if they're a commenter, they can't edit anything, but they can comment. So I'll show you real quick with respect to comments, what that means. So if I wanted to add a comment on this document, comments are added based on whichever cell you have selected. So for example, if I wanted to add a comment to this specific cell that I have selected at the moment, I can do one of two things. Either I can go to this, see this little like chat icon here that's to the left of that share button. I can click that, and then it has this little comment button on the right. So I can click that and add a comment. So I'll just say comment one here, and click comment to post it. So comments are really good for, like, say you're commenting on I don't know, I'm trying to say, hey, this value is wrong, or I don't know, maybe we need to change something. You can kind of interact with the document that way. I'm not actually changing the data, I'm just commenting on the data. So at that point, I can either mark this as resolved, or I can click on the comment and reply to it. So I could type, you know, say comment two and click reply. So you can have a whole comment chain with whomever you're working on the document with. I can mark this as resolved, and what that'll do is it'll basically get rid of the comment, and it'll just basically be in comment history, which we can take a look at as well. So again, if I click on that little comment button, that little icon right here to the left, it'll give you a comment history. So anything that you've marked resolved isn't gone forever. It is still in this comment history. But yeah, so that's comments. So one last thing before we head into the breakout rooms that is very useful, because again, this was a very general overview. If there's a specific question or something that you have that you're trying to figure out how to do in Sheets, this help feature at the top here, so in this top bar, if you click on help, there's quite a number of different options within this. So you can look at Sheets help to just kind of get quick instructions on certain functions in Sheets. So kind of what we were looking at earlier. So I'll click that just to show you. So they kind of give you a list of some of the popular questions people have, but you can search a specific keyword or something that you're trying to figure out in that search bar there. Additionally, there's also this training. There's like full lessons that you can access here on how to do specific things within Sheets. So that's really useful as well. I'm sure there's one on macros. There's also, so again, in this help here, There was also the function list. There we go. So down at the bottom, if you click on function list, it gives you a list of all of the different functions that you can carry out in Sheets. And as you can see, it's huge. So this is when you're clicking, or sorry, when you're typing in that equal sign and it starts to give you a list of functions. These are some of those specific functions and sort of a brief description of what they do. And then finally, in that help menu there at the very bottom, there's something called keyboard shortcuts. So this is really useful as well. This just kind of tells you what some of the different keyboard shortcuts are to carry out certain functions. You can even, I believe in some cases, you can also add your own, but it's not giving me that option right now. If anyone's interested in how to do that, to add specific keyboard functions, just let us know in the Q&A. But these are the ones that are already kind of baked into Sheets. So if there's a specific one that you're like, how do I copy again? I can just type that in and it actually spells it out for you. So Control-C or Control-Insert is how you can copy something in Sheets. So that was a very general overview of Sheets.